Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Reaper, and we are going to be playing some Killing Floor 2 today. Today I'm going to be showing you how to beat Hell on Earth with the Berserker class. I will do this for each of the classes as we go down. I was doing this originally, but then Killing Floor got massively updated, more things got changed, even more stuff got changed, and I just didn't do it. So I should probably come back to these because pretty much most of the classes have been changed since I made that video. I only made one, which was for Berserker. I was planning on doing all of them, but it was shortly before changes were coming out, and I didn't realize how big the changes would be. So, now that we are talking about Berserker again, from that last video, Berserker has been nerfed kind of significantly since then. So I'm going to be showing you what I run with this, and this I'll give you a solo build and a multiplayer build. So for solo, I'm going to be running this build, which is Skirmisher, Butcher, Parry, Smash, and Spartan. The higher level you are, the easier this is going to be, but you don't necessarily need to be level 25 to beat Hell on Earth, especially solo. Berserker is still really strong, even in solo, even after they've been nerfed so much. I'm going to be taking Skirmisher for the faster movement speed and the health regen. It's mostly for the movement speed, though. That just helps out a lot. Butcher for more damage, although Vampire's a good choice. Parry, because Parry gives you more damage than Resistance does, although Resistance is easier to use. And if you're running a ranged build, it would make maybe more sense to go with this. Smash, because we're going to be taking weapons that deal heavy damage with their heavy hit. And Spartan, because I find it more useful than Berserker's Rage, at least with this melee build I'm going to be running. If you wanted a more multiplayer build, I'd suggest Dreadnought, Vampire, or Butcher, whichever one you like more. Resistance if you're taking a ranged build, Parry if you're taking a melee build. Even if you have a melee and ranged build, probably still Parry. Smash with most loadouts, unless you're running weapons like the Katana or the Bone Crusher potentially, and you like using the light attacks more, then Massacre makes sense. Or you could take Massacre for the first wave and just use the Kroval that way. And then I'd still probably recommend Spartan, although Berserker's Rage does work on a ranged build pretty well too, because then you just get more health back, so you get even tankier. So let's begin, and I'm going to be going over the loadouts that I'm going to be using, or the loadout that I will be using for this. There is quite a few loadouts you can use for Berserker. Berserker has some really good weapons to pick from. We're going to be playing 4 rounds Hell on Earth in Burning Paris, because I just wanted to play Burning Paris. It seemed like a good map to start out on. And pretty much for this, I'm going to want to get my parry up, and I'm going to want to use heavy attacks for any of the strong Zeds. I can use light or heavy attacks for any of these small Zeds, because you kill them so quickly that, you know, necessarily killing them with one hit doesn't always matter. And mostly I just want to be moving around a lot as Berserker, so that I can actively see where I need to go. And I don't want to get very close to any bloats. That's going to be the one thing that I want to stay away from. Everything else is usually okay, unless there's like a bunch of rioters or something. So just light attack everything. Pretty simple. I'm also just going to be using free builds for these too, because I'm not going to assume that everybody has the weapons paths and everything, or everybody has all the DLC weapons. Alright, usually in solo what you want to do is move around the map in kind of a circle, or at least an easy pattern that you can go in. For Burning Paris, it's not too bad because you have these areas that you can go to, so you could either go back this way or you could go around the other way that we were at. And even right here we have multiple options. We could go back through this, or we could circle through this building. Usually I like to circle through the building, and once I run through any of these choke points, I want to get all the way through them to where I feel safe. So like in this building, it would be okay, but out here on the street is much safer for me. I have more area where I can run around at. Alright, we'll just get rid of all these little guys with the Kroval. Kroval's good enough to kill pretty much everything for the first couple waves as Berserker. If you're running Smash, even on 6-man Hell on Earth, you can one-shot the rioters if you hit them directly in the head. I kind of screwed up that first hit and hit him in the shoulder. At least with a heavy attack. And then for the bloats, I usually just use the 9mm for it. You can one-shot, headshot them too with the Kroval with a heavy attack if you're running Smash, even on 6-man Hell on Earth, but you have to get close to them. If you're going to do that, it's easier to use an EMP grenade on them. And then, depending on how long you're playing, you might want to keep the Kroval. You might want to sell it. If you do sell it for one of these cheaper weapons, nail gun's a really good option. It does a lot of damage, and you get range. Katana's pretty good, because you can kill small Zeds very fast with it. Fire Axe is good. Road Redeemer's good if you have that one. Piranha Pistols is pretty good now. I'm going to buy the Hemoclobber for this. And we're going to be using this. for the next few waves. And I plan on pairing this with the HRG Tesla Launcher, which is another free weapon. This gives us a ranged option as well as a melee option. The majority of the time we're going to be using this weapon to fight enemies with. We're going to be using the light attacks on small enemies, heavy attacks on crowds and on big enemies. And just to kind of keep us sustained, because even though the Hemoclobber did get nerfed in the last patch, kind of hard, at least for its healing, it still is very weight efficient. It's still pretty cheap. You can still heal some amount from it. And it does enough damage to kill small enemies and even big enemies pretty fast. So once again, I'm just going to move out here. You don't have to move out to this area that I'm fighting in. Just go to an area that you're comfortable with. It's also going to be easier for you to beat any of these maps if you're more familiar with them. And any of the maps that are more consistent, like Burning Paris, or, well, any of them that don't change every level, so none of the holdout maps. Because the holdout maps are going to be the most difficult. And I'm going to want to circle around here, get as much extra value out of ammo boxes as I can. And I'm going to want to avoid Skrakes as much as possible right here. In multiplayer, that's not always realistic because teams will try to fight them. But that's okay. You are one of the better people to be in the front, though. So if enemies do start pouring in, even if you're playing the ranged Berserker and you have more of a tank build, it's still okay for you to be in front and take a few hits for them. Especially if you're using ranged weapons like the Piranha Pistols or the Frostfang. So pretty much just keep moving back, fight enemies when you can. There's a very good lesson to be learned if you can pick your fights when you want them, as opposed to having to fight stuff all the time. Robots can also be a bit of a hassle for you. That's why we're taking the HG Tesla Launcher, because it makes it so things like husks and robots are not going to be that big a deal to you. So just keep moving, just keep healing up if you need to, and just keep killing all the small Zeds. They're probably going to be the first ones to get to you. Try to ignore a lot of the medium and big Zeds, unless you have like a flesh pound coming after you. You can also just kind of ignore them. I'll show you once one of them shows up how you can do that. You can do this with any class too. It's just it's easier to use it with a Berserker than anybody else. Yeah, maybe Survivalist is a bit easy too. Spartan really helps here because, as you can see, I can approach any of the medium or large Zeds without worrying at all if they're going to attack me. It's very unlikely they'll be able to hit me with that. Alright, we'll get rid of all that. And I think it was just like a Husk and some other guys. Yeah, Husk Robot. Try to use your EMP grenades on these guys too. That way they can't use any of their abilities. And you can easily run up and hit them with a heavy attack in the head. Okay. So round 2 done. We will maybe get our HG Tesla Launcher. Maybe just upgrade the Hemoclobber. I'm thinking I'll probably just upgrade the Hemoclobber. Because the Hemoclobber does upgrade okay. It does a pretty good amount of damage. I don't think this affects its healing at all though. So if you're only interested in using it for that, then you should probably just grab the Tesla Launcher as soon as you can. But I'm going to grab this just so that I get a bit more value out of it for me. Then we'll go on to the next wave. Hopefully there will be like a Flesh Pound here that I can kind of show you how to drop aggro from a Flesh Pound. It doesn't work the same way if a Skrake is raging though. If a Skrake's raging, it's better just to try to kill it. Okay, get rid of all that. Also, if you get any downtime like this, be sure to reload your weapons. That kind of goes with every class. Okay, we got a Flesh Pound. He's angry. If you block a Flesh Pound like that, and you just back off, you don't hit him, if nobody hits him, he will calm down. That works well with every class, even if you're not using a melee weapon, which, I mean, every class does have one with their knife. Okay, we're going to try to go back up around here and circle back down around. And then we're going to ignore a majority of this just so that I could go after that bloat, because he was going to be the thing stopping us. So always be looking ahead, or whatever direction you're trying to run in. It's going to make it much easier for you to run around that way. Try to ignore as much stuff that's off to the side, especially if you're playing Berserker. Because Berserker can't be grabbed by small stuff. Same with SWAT. If you're playing SWAT or Berserker or even Firebug, there's a very low chance that anything's going to be able to grab you. Well, I mean, with Berserker, there's no chance, and if you're running the tank SWAT build, there's no chance too. Firebug, it's just like there's a very little chance. Also, learning how to parry is going to help you a lot. It's a pretty important skill to have on Berserker, because it makes it so you can minimize the damage you're taking by a lot. The way that I usually look to block and parry is mostly watch the thing's arms. So if any Zed's attacking you, at least that will melee attack you, just look at its arms, and as soon as it starts to swing, that's usually a good time to try to block. Now that's easier to do if you don't have any ping or anything. If you do have a lot of ping, if you have a lot of latency, it's going to be more difficult for you. Also, Berserker does have a hidden passive, for anybody interested. If you get vomit on your screen, it will wear off faster on you than it will on other classes. Not sure why that's not included with, like, information, but it is.
Lovely.
Okay, beat down this robot. Sometimes the robots can be a bit difficult. They don't always want to die right away, so I usually don't try to go after them right away unless I have, like, the Tesla launcher or something along there. Also, we'll just keep going for the Strike. Okay, he's dead after just 2 hits from that. Took him a little while to bleed out. Okay. And get rid of the husk. Husks are always kind of scary too as Berserker. The EMP grenades make it a little bit easier for you to deal with them. That way they can't suicide on you. Alright, so we did that. Like I said, Berserker is going to be one of the easier classes to beat Hell on Earth with solo. They can be kind of easy to beat with multiplayer too, because if you adopt a tank build and you go with something like the Bone Crusher, you're pretty safe. This build is also a fairly safe build. You have good defense with the Hemoclobber, and you have range with the Tesla Launcher, so you can deal with most enemies. Most of the time I still use the Hemoclobber in this build, just to kill any of the like small and medium enemies, deal damage to stuff. And then if there's enemies that are coming from a distance, I can shoot them with this. Depending on the map, you can also use this early on. Like in Containment Station, where you can be firing down the hallway with one of your weapons and then switch to your melee weapons if anything gets close. So again, at a distance, feel free to use this weapon. It does enough damage to body shot and headshot small and medium Zeds fast enough. You don't need to be very accurate. You can also kill flesh pounds pretty quick with this, at least quarter pounds.
There's a cloaked Zed here somewhere.
Alright. And this build also works pretty well against any of the bosses. Okay, we're gonna get rid of those husks right away too, because they are an immediate danger to us. One of them didn't die. Well, now he did. We'll use this to get rid of robots and stuff. Mostly we just want this to spray at either small enemies or at robots most of the time. It works pretty well against everything though, so if you do see things like sirens, feel free to shoot them. Also, at least for me, it helps a lot if you're playing aggressive as Berserker. Because a lot of the time, enemies might just ignore you, especially in multiplayer. I don't know why that is. They might try to go after somebody else in particular. And if you're confident that you can fight everything, it's going to help out the team a bit more. Alright, so back out here to this area because I hear another flesh pound coming out. 3 flesh pounds, it looks like. Because I hear one and I see 2. So But once again, we're just going to try to loop them through these buildings. You can't close the doors behind you, at least in solo. I wouldn't really recommend doing it in multiplayer as much, because it can kind of mess with your team. Alright, here seems like a decent place to block. So, as you can see, we do have 3 Fleshbounds after us, but it doesn't really matter all that much as Berserker. We lost a decent amount of armor there. But that's okay. We're still at full health. And we can still keep running our loop. Of course, take care of any little guys along the way. It's just going to make it a little bit easier for you to maneuver that way. Yeah, that one's dead. Oop. Got a little bit confused there. Okay, get rid of the siren. We'll reload this. Since we were kind of a distance from the Fleshbounds. Oh, got hit there. That's okay though. Oh, he made a Scrake angry as well. Don't know when that happened. Okay, he's dead. Fleshbound's dead. Alright, just a robot, a bloat, and little guy. Okay. Okay, there we go. Now we get boss wave, and this build does work pretty well against any of the bosses. Ideally, we want to be going against a ranged, or not a ranged boss, a melee boss. So we want to be going against the King Fleshbound. He would be the best boss for us to fight as Berserker, because melee weapons completely destroy him. You can block and parry almost all of his hits, except for his, I guess, his ground pound and his laser, which you can duck underneath the laser, assuming the ground is flat. Alright, we got Matriarch. Matriarch's not necessarily one of the hardest, actually, with this build, because the HRG Tesla launcher is going to help us a lot against the robots, and against her in general. So,
would you like to be part of an electrical
what you mostly want to do against the Matriarch is just keep using cover. Try to bait out her shots, so kind of stand out in the open, and then quickly get behind a solid object. Especially like these cars, and since we're Berserker, we have extra movement speed, so we can actually just outrun her. Just make sure you know which direction she's coming from. Oh yeah, she doesn't like EMP blasts either, so this weapon really works against her. Also be sure when she does that to just back away from her. It's going to be easier if you do that. Okay. We got her shield off. We're probably going to have to leave this spot to get some extra ammo. Yeah, maybe. Just keep kind of putting stuff in between you and her. That's going to be the easiest way to get out of the way of this. And this weapon destroys robots very fast, even if you're just hitting them in the body, which is the best place to hit them. Okay. We'll just get this out of the way. She did hit us with that electric shot, which is okay. We're going to go up in here just because there was ammo, and because I'm fairly confident she can't catch up to us that fast. Even if she does, we do have the EMPs to stop her from doing anything. So, that's very good. Mostly, like I said, we just want to run around here and grab ammo. And kill any of the robots along the way. It'll just make our life a little bit easier as we go.
My sensors will find this is how science really works.
Also, if you EMP yourself, don't worry about it. You don't do that much damage to yourself with it.
Would you like to be part of an electrical? I wouldn't get overconfident.
Alright. We took out a big chunk of her health there. Okay, now this part's going to be the easiest for you as Berserker, because it's essentially just run back and keep firing at her. Which, this build's really good at doing that. And again, you don't need to be all that accurate with this weapon. You don't need to be going for headshots. It's going to help. If she does grab you like that and you happen to have your melee weapon out, it's going to be easier because then you can just sit there and block. Do it again. Alright. And we got her. That wasn't too bad. This build works really well against all the bosses. It's one of the safest builds, I would say. That's a free build to take with Berserker, because if you go full melee and you end up getting her, or you end up getting Abomination or Patriarch, it can be a little bit difficult. Patriarch's usually not too bad, but the other two can be a bit rough. If you go full melee, though, you'll have a super easy time beating, like, the King Fleshpound. So that kind of explains how I usually beat stuff on Hell on Earth, at least with Berserker. Berserker's really strong. You can use them on most maps pretty effectively. And if you get very high leveled, like level 25 like I am, it's going to be much easier for you.